This is Jesse Bernhardt, and you're listening to Pro Lacrosse Talk.
On Schreiber. Sidearm whip. Scores. Now it's Rob Pannell scores. Hands off for Rabel. Switches hands and scores.
Kylie O'Miller showing off those shifty skills.
Right off the bat, there's Lyle Thompson.
Welcome to Pro Lacrosse Talk, the voice of Pro Lacrosse. I'm Hutton, he's Adam. Together we're bringing you interviews with your favorite players and coaches, as well as news from all 4 professional lacrosse leagues. All right, so welcome up to another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk. This is episode 72. We're going to talk the PLL entry draft today with Dan Arestia, but the biggest news, of course, is the NLL suspending its season temporarily because of the coronavirus. We're just going to start right off the bat with this on this podcast episode. We did record earlier with a section with Dan Arestia, which you guys will hear a little bit later, where we talk about the entry draft, the players coming over to the PLL, including the big name Rob Pannell. But I do want to start off, unfortunately, on a sour note with the NLL suspending its season because of the coronavirus outbreak. This obviously comes off the heels of not just the NCAA deciding to cancel all spring sports, but also the NBA had an outbreak and decided to suspend their season, which, the NLL quickly followed after, and then they were followed by the NHL and the MLB, also announcing that the seasons were temporarily put on hold until they could figure out how to contain this coronavirus outbreak that is, sweeping the globe right now. So, very unfortunate. I think the NLL handled it in the correct manner. They put out a statement, and the commissioner, Nick Sakevich, actually released a video. So we'll play a little bit of that video right now for you.
Nick Sakevich, Commissioner of the National Lacrosse League here. Greetings to NLL fans, athletes, coaches, sponsors, valued partners, and members of the media. These are truly unprecedented times, and at no point in over 3 decades of the National Lacrosse League did we expect to be faced with the current set of circumstances surrounding the coronavirus outbreak. We find ourselves in a truly unpredictable, evolving scenario which is changing by the day. I wanted to take this moment to connect with you and let you know what steps the National Lacrosse League and all of its member clubs are doing to address the COVID-19 virus. The league office, in consultation with our medical and infectious disease professionals, has been closely monitoring the outbreak of the virus, and we are taking all necessary actions to be respectful of the health and well-being of our fans, our partners, our athletes, coaches, team staffs, and the communities we play in. We have been taking the lead along with our fellow professional sports leagues and working hard to stay in front of the developing situation. Aligned with what makes sense given the current information, it is in the best interests of all to temporarily suspend play until further notice due to the concerns over COVID-19. We understand the challenges that come along with this decision and the impact it has on everyone. However, it is health and safety of everyone that is our top priority and always will be. With game day postponed, we are actively working to reschedule competition and team events, address ticketing policies, and adjust the NLL broadcast content offering with our partners at BR Live. We will communicate with you updates, decisions, and plans as they are determined. We will continue to get daily updates from government officials and health leaders around the world, and will make any adjustments needed to ensure the safety of everyone who attends one of our events. We encourage you to follow CDC's and Health Canada's recommended steps to prevent illness, and please stay safe. We know that the world can't and won't stop moving because of this virus, and we are confident all the proper steps are being put in place to get through this as soon as possible. We've heard from many of our fans, and the NLL will be there for you. You have our commitment today and every day that we will continue to connect with you, because it's more important than ever to choose an attitude of support and safety. Thank you for your amazing support of the National Lacrosse League, and see you soon when we resume play in our great arenas and our great cities.
So that is Commissioner Nick Sakevich talking about the measures they are taking to address the coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. This is a big deal for the NLL. Obviously, they rely heavily on the revenue they make from these ticket sales and from the arenas. So putting it on hold is going to, unfortunately maybe affect their bottom line. We don't know, if these players are going to be getting paid. These workers at these arenas aren't going to be getting paid. So it's going to have major ripple effects. It's very unfortunate, for a league like the NLL, as well as, the other professional leagues, the MLL and the PLL. If it does affect this upcoming summer, this is some trying times, and I think, it kind of shows the seriousness of this coronavirus outbreak. there's no knee-jerk reaction here. Like, this obviously was a calculated decision by the leagues. Obviously, a domino effect coming from the NBA's decision. But, take this very seriously. And that's kind of where we're at. So hopefully the NLL will be able to resume in the coming weeks with no issues, whether that means, extending the season into the later summer months or, maybe, shortening the rest of the regular season and, going into the playoffs right away. Who knows? We'll keep you guys updated. But that is our update on the coronavirus. Very unfortunate, also for, those college lacrosse players whose seasons have ended, especially the seniors. This was their last season, so, we send our regards to them as well. Whether the NCAA will grant them another year of eligibility, we don't know, but that really can't make up for a lost season. This is going to have effect on the summer drafts, too, if players do decide to return next year. But enough doom and gloom. Let's take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsor, and then Dan and I will break down this PLL entry draft and who we think may go number 1 overall. Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of the Pro Lacrosse Talk podcast. We've been using Anchor for our podcast since the very start. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place, and better yet, it's free. They allow you to easily record and edit your podcast so it sounds great and send it out to all the major networks such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. Better yet, they connect you with advertisers so you can start making money from your podcast right away. So if you're interested in starting a podcast, download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Today's show is being brought to you in part by Stitcher Premium. You can use Stitcher Premium to listen to shows ad-free such as Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, My Favorite Murder, Wolverine the Lost Trail, or our favorite, The Fantasy Footballers. For only $4.99 a month or $34.99 a year, you get access to Stitcher Originals, bonus episodes, and comedy albums. Better yet, if you go over to Stitcher.com/premium and use the promo code lacrosse today, you can get 1 month free. So head on over to Stitcher, sign up, and get your free trial today.
Where's Rob Pannell? You should play in the PLL. Finally.
Yes, finally, Rob Pannell is a member of the PLL. Really to no surprise to anyone. We all heard the rumors that it was happening, but it is made official by the PLL in a video that they released on Monday, as well as 15 other players from the MLL that will be joining the PLL this summer. We're going to break down all of those, give you that full list in a little bit, but I want to welcome our Pro Lacrosse Talk contributor and Pro Lacrosse insider, Dan Arestia, to the show once again. He was on the show for the first time last week, and we're glad to have him back. Dan, welcome back, and how's it going?
Doing okay. It's been obviously a big news day for the PLL in terms of the entry draft. The news around college lacrosse has been just a wild day in general for lacrosse fans.
No, for sure. We're going to definitely break down that entry draft, all the people that are available. But to start, let's do our quick stick. We'll start off with the NLL. David Ayres, the Zamboni driver for the Toronto Marlies, as well as the emergency goaltender for the Toronto Arena, came in and played for the Carolina Hurricanes and ended up beating the Toronto Maple Leafs to become the oldest goaltender to make not only his NHL debut, but to also secure a win in the NHL. He was making a lot of media appearances, and Saskatchewan took advantage of that. They had him at the Saskatchewan Rush game. He actually got in net at the pregame and took a few shots. If you haven't checked out his story, I highly recommend it. He had a kidney transplant when he was younger, nearly 15 years ago, and to be able to, come into a NHL hockey game, it's just a tremendous story. So really kudos to the Rush for having him out at that game. And in some other news in the NLL, Commissioner Nick Sakevich announces that the 14th NLL team has been decided on. They've chosen a U.S. market, although he did not reveal which one, and it will be revealed in the coming months. So a lot of speculation is that it's going to either be Dallas or Vegas. We don't really have any more information on that, but it is exciting to know that that announcement will be coming soon. Let's talk about guys that are re-signing with the MLL. Mikey Schlosser re-signs with the Denver Outlaws. We had him on our podcast earlier, so he will be back with Denver. Alex Spring re-signs with the Lizards. Chris Eslanian, who was a Rookie of the Year candidate last year, he signs back with Denver. And Andrew Q, who we had on our podcast as well, scored that game-winning goal in the MLL Championship that gave the Bayhawks their 6th title in franchise history, re-signs with the Bayhawks. A few other moves that happened. Denver Outlaws acquired Brian Cormondi from the Connecticut Hammerheads in exchange for a 4th-round pick. The Boston Cannons trade Connor O'Hara to the New York Lizards for Scott Corcoran. This move was obviously made because of the wealth of attack that they have acquired with the likes of Randy Stotts, Brian Cole, and Bryce Wasserman. So those are your latest moves in the MLL. Now for the PLL. Wes Berg inked a 3-year contract extension with the Waterdogs, and Max Tuttle signed a 2-year contract extension with the Chrome. And then finally, the PLL announced their tour stops. The previously announced weeks were Week 1, they go to Boston. Week 2, they go to Atlanta. Week 3, they go to Long Island. Week 4, they go to Baltimore. Week 5, they go to Dallas. And Week 6, they go to Minneapolis. They still haven't revealed Week 7, which is the All-Star game that is to be announced. And then they recently announced Portland will be Week 8. Raleigh, North Carolina will be Week 9. Albany, New York will be Week 10. Salt Lake City will be Week 11. And they'll end the regular season with Week 12 at Denver. All right, so that's our quick stick. So Dan, obviously Rob Pannell has announced that he is joining the PLL for 2020, to no surprise to anyone. And then we had some other guys that are coming over. I think everybody on your original list that you announced, of the 8 people, was correctly predicted on this list. And then there's a few big surprises, particularly, Zach Currier and Dillon Ward. But let me just read out all the people that will be joining the PLL this summer. You have Jesse Bernhardt, who played for the Chesapeake Bayhawks last season and won a championship with them. His brother Jake is currently in the league with the Whip Snakes. You have Craig Chick, who was a rookie out of Lehigh last season and played with the Rattlers and was also a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. You had TJ Camizio, short stick defensive midi out of Villanova, who really made a huge impact on the Blaze last season. Zach Currier, one of the biggest names on this list, played with the Denver Outlaws last season and currently plays with the Calgary Roughnecks in the NLL. Eli Gobrecht, he played with the Outlaws for the past couple seasons, as well as plays for the San Diego Seals. He was hampered by some injuries last season, but he seems to be fully healthy now headed into 2020. Josh Hawkins, coming out of retirement. This one was pretty surprising. He most recently played for the Outlaws, a graduate of Loyola and a defensive-minded midfielder. Brendan Cavanaugh, brother of Matt Cavanaugh, who played on the Outlaws last season, has entered the PLL. Christian Mazzone, former Rutgers guy, actually sat out the whole season in 2018, did not see the field, and then really took his first shot with the Atlanta Blaze last season in strides and really produced for that high-powered offense. So it's good to see him joining the league. Donnie Moss, a 10-year veteran of professional lacrosse, he's joining the PLL. Jason Noble, another veteran defender who also plays in the NLL with the Georgia Swarm. Then Greg Puskeljian, a face-off guy who was with the Lizards last season. He enters the draft as the only face-off guy in this entry draft and could be a prime candidate for a team like the Redwoods. Rylan Reese, long stick midfielder with the Boston Cannons and defender with the Rochester Nighthawks. He was a rookie out of Stony Brook. I see him going pretty high on this list. Finn Sullivan, a defender who's been in the MLL for a couple seasons now with the Outlaws. Zed Williams played with the Cannons last season, is with the Georgia Swarm. Originally played with Virginia in college. A really multi-dimensional player that I think will fit in really well with the PLL. And then finally, the biggest shocker to me, Dillon Ward, starting goaltender of the Outlaws, has announced that he is joining the PLL as the only goaltender available in this entry draft. So that's your list of guys. All these guys have strong resumes. The list is smaller than we expected, but the players entering this PLL entry draft couldn't be any stronger.
Yeah, I had said, of course, that I thought, and I had heard that Dillon Ward was expected to be going back to Denver. I think Denver was confident that was going to get done, and it looks like that didn't, work out there. I do get the impression that this is a list of guys that the MLL was ready for. I don't think there were too many names on this list where the MLL was like, oh my God, what? So, looking at the names that are on it, Dillon Ward, of course, is one of the best goalies in the world. You see him play for Team Canada in the summer games and stuff like that, and you're just blown away by his ability to stop the ball from all distances, from all angles. He's just an incredibly gifted goalie.
And
but there's
excels in the just to add to that, he excels in the NLL too. I still, me and Adam go back and forth, and I think he's the top goaltender right now in the NLL. There's obviously some great goaltenders in that, and it's a different game, but he just shows how versatile he is of a goaltender.
Yeah, and of course I can't get enough of the Trey Board meme. That's always a ton of fun.
Of course.
But looking down this list, what jumps out at you immediately is the defensive talent that's on it. The two of the three Defensive Player of the Year finalists in the MLL are here in Finn Sullivan and Craig Chick. So there's some serious firepower on the defensive end here, and it's not just the close defenders who can't get involved. A lot of these guys are guys who can push the ball, who can create, whether it's Bernhardt or a Ryland Reese or even like a Finn Sullivan or a Craig Chick can put the ball on the ground and then bring it up the field for you. There's been a lot of really good Goldbeck highlights on Twitter and everything the last, since the list was announced too. So, there's some really dynamic defensive and two-way talent on here. Whether it's Currier, who, again, sort of in more recent times, it looked more like he was going to be a PLL guy, and that, of course, became official today. But, Christian Mazzone is a guy who had 40 ground balls and 40 goals in the regular season in the MLL last year, and if memory serves, he was the only guy who did that in the entire league. So, he's an impact guy. And then Camizio is really probably going to be listed as a short stick D-midi, but he's going to be a transition threat. He's a big athletic kid. So, there's those kind of guys who you see immediately the way they'll fit into the PLL schemes.
No, absolutely. I mean, and you mentioned Mazzone too. He didn't even suit up his rookie season in 2018 and got his first stint, with the Atlanta Blaze last season. He mentioned how thankful he was for that. But he's excited to join one of his buddies in Jules Henningberg in the PLL. I think he could perchance drop down to the Redwoods. I don't know if they take him, because they do have a lot of depth at the midfield position, but again, nothing's off limits, I guess, for these teams. There's just so much talent that it's actually harder to predict where guys will end up.
Yeah, I would agree. I sort of started breaking down, looking at teams and stuff like that. I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a second. But trying to figure out who's going to take who is really not easy, because you have to start considering who was on the field for these teams in year one, and whose spot these guys are taking. I'm sure these guys aren't coming over here to just sit on their couch on Saturdays when they don't get a call to dress. These guys are here to play. So, they're taking somebody's spot, and the roster's only 18 guys. So, trying to figure out the guy that's getting bumped out to make room for these guys is not easy.
No, not at all. And, we mentioned too how on our last podcast episode how, we were expecting, a bigger pool of guys to come over. We were, looking 25-30 range. Ended up only being 16, but I think that's, it makes a lot of sense because all these 16 guys had the chance to be an all-star next season. And honestly, probably some guys that maybe were considering it knew what they would be competing against and chose to, maybe stay in the MLL. And I think, you got, even though there's only 16 guys coming over the PLL, it's loads of talent. I kind of wonder too, though, if the PLL knew it was going to be this low, when they plan only 2 rounds for the entry draft. So, really only 2 guys will go undrafted and they'll enter the player pool. But, yeah, I don't know. This draft is stacked right now. Between this and the college draft, I think teams are going to look vastly different than what they were in year one.
Yeah, like you said, 2 of these guys are going to go undrafted in the entry draft, and they'll hit the player pool, and they'll leave that player pool pretty quickly because again, these aren't the kind of guys that sit in the player pool or really bounce around from team to team, dressing for one team and then hitting the player pool and suiting up for another team next week. These are guys that are impact players. Yeah,
no, for sure. And we have an article out that kind of lists the best spots for these guys to land. But, let's kind of go through some of the bigger names and, where we think they would best fit. I will start off with Rob Pannell. We both think he'll go number 1. I don't think that's still changed for me. I still personally would take him number 1, despite, the addition of Currier and Ward. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that he doesn't. So let's say he doesn't go to the Waterdogs. Where do you think he'd end up? Do you see a team maybe trading up to get him, or do you see a team like the Chrome or Atlas, him falling to the Chrome or Atlas if, the Waterdogs don't take him number one?
Joe Keegan has done a really good job sort of breaking this down after this news came out today, talking about how Copeland has been very outspoken about his desire for versatility and doesn't want to be a team that needs to do a lot of subbing to get their guys on and off the field. Currier solves that for them. He's a guy who can play on both ends of the field and can be impactful, incredibly impactful on the offensive end, obviously, but, is meaningful on the defensive end, is meaningful in transition. So, for him to go number one, I think is less and less of a surprise. Or, Joe Keegan, again, earlier tonight was saying he's spoken to some coaches who all seem to think that Currier is going to go number one. So, knowing what Copeland's done so far, I think Currier might be a guy you see there go at one. For Pannell, if Currier goes to the Waterdogs, the Chrome is second, and I don't know if they would take him given the attack they already have. I think they like what they have in Jordan Wolf, and he's going to be that guy that plays an X for them, and he's obviously a Team USA All-World player. So, not that Rob isn't, but and I'm sure if they wanted to, they could make that fit. But I think it's more enticing for them maybe to try and trade out of that spot, because if Currier's not there, I think they can get an awful lot for somebody trying to trade up for Pannell. Even if it's the Atlas moving up one spot, I've been saying, and I would just love the fit of Rob Pannell on the Archers. Just play him at X with Holman,
I do too.
Holman and Manning, and just watch goals just pile up left and right. There's no shot he makes it to 4. So if the Archers really want him, they have to trade up. He won't make it past the Atlas, even if no trades happen, and the Chrome for some incredible reason were to pass on him. So I think the Archers would be a fit where I think he would do really well. The Atlas are a fit that makes sense. If they trade, I could see them trading up for him just because, playing him at attack with Ryan Brown and Eric Law is another great situation where you're going to just watch goals get pumped in by that attack unit. It's not the worst thing in the world that they're all the same hand or anything like that, so they can make that work. I could see that maybe happening. I know when Rob was first announced as a guy that was coming, there was kind of the sentiment like, if he winds up on the Atlas, it's because Rabel fixed it and blah, blah, blah. I think if they have to trade up to get him, they're going to give up an awful lot to do so. And the Atlas have other needs as well. They lost to the Waterdogs in expansion Ryan Conrad, Noah Richard, Steve DiNapoli. So they have needs at the midfield, and they addressed that a little bit with trading for Romar, but like we said earlier, you look at sort of some of the defensive talent and the two-way midi talent that's there. It's a possibility that they could go a different way.
No, absolutely, and I think that's what's going to make this draft so interesting. Is I personally think how it's going to shake out is I think every team kind of stays put. I think Waterdogs take Rob Pannell at number 1. I think the Chrome end up going with Dillon Ward in cage. I think he's too valuable to pass up. They're probably the team that has the strongest need at goaltender right now. You could put the Waterdogs in that category too, because we don't know what we're going to get from Cipriano. He hasn't started in a few years. I still think he's starting caliber, but Dillon Ward is an all-world goaltender in both field and indoor. So he has the caliber, he has the resume, and then I think I think Zach Currier ends up on the Atlas and gives them that dual threat, a two-way midi that they're lacking. Losing DiNapoli, losing Noah Richard obviously is an LSM, but he kind of fills that void for them, in having a defensive-minded midfielder who can also obviously score on the offensive side, as we've seen, being a transition guy in the NLL and, being an offensive midi with the Outlaws last season. But I think it really comes down, if the Waterdogs take Currier, like, we could see a massive shakeup. I don't know, do you think maybe the Chrome swap picks with the Archers, where the Archers move up to 2 in the entry draft and then give up their number 1 to the Chrome, and then they move down to 4 in the college draft, and the Chrome moved down to 4 in the entry draft? I don't think that would be out of the realm of possibility. What do you think of that move?
Yeah, well, the thing with the Archers is, like we said, I've said I love Pannell as a fit for them, but Chris Bates can also just sit there and be like, all right, look, if he doesn't fall to me at 4, fine. I'm going to take my guy, Michael Sowers,
Yep.
number 1 in the college draft, and I'm good with that. I can play Michael Sowers at X and be pretty happy. But, Michael Sowers is about as electrifying of a prospect as there's been a long time, and you can see what he's doing already and just how much he would absolutely be a force on that Archers team in a 6-on-6 set. So, I think the Archers, if I'm Chris Bates, I'm less inclined to try and move because I have the number 1 pick in the college draft, and whatever need I maybe don't totally address in this draft, I can take the first guy I want out of college to address it there. Or, again, trade out of that pick for a king's ransom because there'll be people who will want Sowers, or, if somebody decides they'd rather have Ament or somebody else like that, then they'll be able to do that. But I think that pick is going to be Sowers. That's what people are going to be trading for. But
absolutely.
I think the Archers are less inclined to try and move. I would think that if Currier doesn't go, I don't think Currier makes it out of the top 2 picks. I think he's going to the Waterdogs or he's going to the Chrome. I think Pannell Currier happens in some order there. I'm with you on Dillon Ward. I think he's great. I think the Waterdogs have. They have 6 open spots on the roster, and there's lots of opportunities to get a goalie. There's not that many goalie openings in the PLL. So we'll see sort of who fills that spot. Dillon Ward's going to fill one of them, and then you've really only got 1 or 2 more gigs that are open for the guys in college. So, we'll see what happens there. But I can't imagine Zach Currier making it past the Chrome. The need for a guy like him on that team is just so great. They need that kind of player. The midfielders that they still have, the Danowski and Crotty and those guys are really solid players. Crotty is still a really special offensive player. Danowski is a really solid offensive player. But those guys aren't, the two-way type guys anymore. And, that's the kind of guy they need to add to that roster a little bit. I can't imagine Currier making it past the Chrome.
Yeah, no, I only say that because they do have a guy like a Jordan McIntosh there. Max Tuttle just signed an extension.
And
I think
John Vanagan too, and that kind of thing. Yeah, I sort of see that a little bit, but if you're in the PLL, and this is no disrespect to those players who were all really, really good.
Absolutely,
I'm a huge John Vanagan fan, but if the first midfield line you send out on offense is Vanagan, Tuttle, and Jordan McIntosh, is that enough? Is that enough firepower? I'm not totally convinced. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the age-old question, which all professional sports deal with. It's like, do you take the biggest need that you have? Because I think their biggest need right now is in cage. I think Galloway, is definitely a capable starter. I think he's starting to lose a step a little bit, and I think they would have a huge upgrade there with Dillon Ward. But again, the other question is, do you take the best player available? And now,
best player, best need,
right now, the best player available is both Zach Currier and Rob Pannell. And like you said, you don't see either of them making it past 2. So, that's the question that Coach Sudan and Coach Copeland are going to have to make. And, we can speculate all we want, but ultimately it's up to them to decide, what's going to be best for their future going forward. Is it a Rob Pannell? Is it a Zach Currier? Or is it, Dillon Ward? And those are, who we think are the top 3 in this draft. But yeah, after that, it kind of gets a little more interesting. If Dillon Ward doesn't go to the Chrome, I think, I think maybe he falls to, say, a Redwoods or a Chaos. I mean, I know the Redwoods already have Tim Troutner, who was their starter last year, and obviously Jack Kelly, many people think is going to get a start in this league at some point. But again, to me, Dillon Ward is that top caliber goaltender. So it's tough where he falls. And, kind of let's talk about, Jesse Bernhardt, who many, I think, consider the top pole in this draft, which is loaded with, tons of defensive players. Where do you think Jesse Bernhardt could end up?
Yeah, if I'm looking for polls, I'm looking probably the guys I'm targeting first are guys like Jesse and guys like Ryland Reese. Reese is a guy who I thought might make sense for the Atlas at 3. I thought
kind of replace Noah Richard a little bit.
I think he's a perfect replacement for Noah Richard, and so that was a move I kind of like to see. Bernhardt is a guy who's going to be in the mix in transition, who's got to be in the mix on the offensive end, who's dynamic and can play down low, who can play on wings, can do the pole spot for you. It really sort of depends on how teams feel about the current poles that they have. Describing him that way, obviously he's also a guy who would fit on the Atlas and be that sort of replacement for Noah that they're looking for. Noah was a guy who played down low for them sometimes, played on wings, did the pole thing, hit it 2 this year. So, it's kind of a good fit there. I don't know if I would see him going to the Archers. I think the Archers, didn't really lose much in the way on the defensive end to the expansion draft.
And they were the top defense in the league too. So
yeah, they're a top defense with solid goaltending as it is. So that makes sense. If he makes it to 5, that's where the whips are. And I mean, there's no way they pass putting the Bernhardts together.
No,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
Even with Earhart there and the defense that's that good, I feel like the Bernhardts being united is just something that we would just love to see happen. So. I don't think he would make it further than that. The place that I think a team that would really need a guy like him is a team like the Chaos, who, they lose Brody Merrill, who's sort of a defensive leader and a guy at the center of that defense. Replacing Brody is really, really hard. And I think a guy with experience like Jesse Bernhardt is a good place to start. Guys I thought that could make sense there were Jesse or even a Jason Noble who's on the list. Sort of the Brody Merrill protege. Replacing Brody Merrill would be kind of poetic and kind of nice for the Chaos. But yeah, those are the places where I think I could see Jesse going or some of these polls winding up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, it starts to get a little bit more interesting towards those bottom spots. It kind of gets into the places like where can you fill the best need? After you get through the top 3, you have a lot of defenders, so it depends on which one these guys want to take. Then you got, a guy like Greg Puskalajian, like, do the Redwoods take him and kind of fill that face-off need? Or at least have somebody, to kind of, be there in case they aren't able to get one in the college draft. I mean, that's an interesting proposition. And the other thing about this draft that was just recently revealed is it's not a serpentine draft. So the Waterdogs will get the 8th pick. And mentioned the Chaos, they have some needs on the defensive side of the ball and also the defensive midi. They're going to pick at number 7 and number 14. So they kind of got the short end of the stick on this. I think if I'm then, though, I definitely take a poll with that 7th pick. And then I hope that, TJ Camizio maybe falls down to them at that last pick so that they can kind of, replace the Kyle McClancy that they lost in the Waterdogs in the expansion draft. But Coach Towers definitely has his hands full with this one. So I wonder too if they use some of their attackmen that they have on the roster as leverage to maybe move up in this entry draft, given that they are in a bad spot drafting at 7 and 14.
Yeah. When I was doing this too, Camizio to the Chaos was something I sort of penciled in as something that I thought was a good fit, and a place where I think that would be, the kind of place where you could expect a guy like Camizio to get drafted was in that sort of that late first round, early second round kind of spot. And he's obviously a good fit for the Chaos with their need with Kyle McClancy leaving for the Waterdogs. So, but like you said, with it not being serpentine, Coach Towers is probably going to have to make a choice between taking one of those experienced poles that can play at the center of the defense or taking TJ Camizio. And then, because whichever one he takes, the other one isn't going to be there at 14.
Yeah.
That's not going to be around. So, we'll sort of see how he decides to play that. I think a lot of that might have to do with how he evaluates what's coming out of college and where he thinks he can get the most there. If you're looking at this and you're seeing all these polls and then be like, all right, I can get one of these guys who I really feel good about, and then I'll roll the dice in the college draft and maybe I'll try and get Dearth or Terafenko or something like that to replace Kyle McClancy. That might be better than trying to grab a pole in this college draft or a close defenseman in this college draft, which might not be there at the level of talent that you're looking at in the entry player draft.
No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that's definitely what stands out to me most about this entry draft. It's very defensive heavy, where the college draft, is more offensive, midi, attackman heavy. But before we wrap up this discussion, there's one team we mentioned a little bit, we didn't really talk about, but they have some major needs, and that's the defending champs, the Whipsnakes. They need attackmen. which really just aren't available in this entry draft, with, really Rob Pannell being the only attackman available. What do you think they're kind of looking to do? Do you think they take a Christian Mazzone to kind of replace, that Drew Snyder that they kind of lost in the expansion draft? Do you think they maybe try to trade up somehow? They don't really have the picks right now to do that. But what do you think their strategy is? What's the strategy for Coach Stagnita on draft day?
Yeah, well, the Whips lose. They lose Reeves, they lose Drenner, they lose Connor Kelly, and they lose Drew Snyder. And it's tough because those are all such different pieces of what they did. So it's not like you can try and grab a guy to fit a bunch of, to just sort of erase that. But, I don't. It feels a little too early to try and take Christian Mazzone at 5. One guy I think they could take, even though he might not necessarily, he might seem a little square peg in a round hole-ish, but Zed Williams can do so much on offense.
I was thinking the same thing.
And he's such a versatile guy. He's such a good goal scorer. He's a guy where you can sort of pick the spot you want to play him in. He's one of those, they have the A and the M next to his name for a reason. So, his sort of versatility, and I think, sort of the quick rush is going to be on, Pannell, Currier, and then I think Atlas might, if Atlas goes defense, and Archers doesn't let Zed Williams go by, which, again, Zed Williams playing and sort of pairs offense is something that I'm sure Chris Bates loves the idea of. If Zed Williams gets by there, I think that would be a great pick for the Whips to try and, have somebody they can manipulate their offense with a little bit. They can move him to a lot of different spots, and he can be effective in so many spots. But, I think the Whips would go with a guy like that.
No, I like that pick a lot. I think, he's another deep threat that they can add. He can play, the two-man game from the wing, either, if he's, inverting with Rambo or if he's going with a John Haas. I really like that pick as well. And, there are guys, too, on the Whip Snakes. A guy like, a Dylan Maltz that didn't really see much time last season, played with Rambo at Maryland. Those are guys that might, step up in the absence of some of these guys that they lost. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom for the Whip Snakes. They're still the defending champs for a reason. They still have that big defensive core. They have the 2-point king and Mike Chanichuk still there. So, it's just interesting to see what they're kind of looking. They still have to kind of bide their time with this entry draft. And fill those needs at attack and kind of wait kind of for the college draft to do so. But, definitely interesting. I really don't think this entry draft is going to be easy to nail down just because there is just such a wealth of talent and, there's going to be a ripple effect depending on who goes number 1.
Yeah, it's a thing where if somebody really decides Zach Currier is that special of a two-way guy and they love his fit for this league, and they think they can pry him away from Copeland, maybe a team just opens up the bank to try and move up. And then, you look sort of at where fits are and where that guy that fits, where needs are and where that fit might fall in the draft. There's just teams that look like they would want to shuffle spots just a little bit here and there, So maybe teams try and do that with their second-round picks or something like that. They try and shuffle, as the thing goes on and see if they can come up with something to grab a guy that slides a little bit or, move up to grab somebody that they decide is really special. I think, where Dillon Ward goes is going to be really interesting. The goalie play in the PLL was so good, and it's really hard to imagine one of those guys losing their job to an entry draft player. But this is, like you said, this is Dillon Ward we're talking about. So I think just about every team in the league, is somebody that would make sense. I even think, if he made it to the Chaos is a team that has an open goalie spot. And I know they have Blaze Reardon, but, if you're telling me if a team only has one goalie on the roster and they can take Dillon Ward, they're not going to do it. I think that would be something that would happen. I don't know if he even makes it to 7, though.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you one thing. I don't think he's going to go undrafted in this entry draft.
No,
that's for sure.
He's not going to go undrafted. He's going to be playing for somebody.
Yeah.
The Waterdogs have one goalie, but I don't know if he's going to go first overall.
Yeah.
That would be the curveball of all curveballs here. I don't even want to comprehend a mock draft where Dillon Ward goes first overall. But,
yeah, it's possible.
The teams that need a goalie that makes sense, the Waterdogs need a backup. The Chrome, I can see it. Maybe they're trying to get, somebody else in there to push Galloway and Queener and see if somebody just steps up and wins that job there. And then, maybe, we didn't see much of Dan Morris for the Whipsnakes in the backup spot, so maybe there's somebody who can push that. And then the Chaos have obviously an open spot on the roster from the expansion draft, and those are sort of the way I see it, those are the only places where goalies really open. I can't imagine the Woods with Troutner and Jack Kelly being like, let's bring in somebody else. I'm sure they feel really good about those two guys. So, and obviously the Archers I'm sure are feeling great about their situation as well. They played two goalies last summer, and it worked well for them. So,
yeah, no, it's definitely going to be interesting, and we will have some mock drafts for you guys come Monday, as well as a podcast episode recapping this entry draft and who goes where, later next week. So be on the lookout for that. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Unfortunately, one of our shorter episodes, we did have a lot to talk about with the NLL that we had to cut because we just didn't feel like it was appropriate with the NLL season ending. Hopefully, though, in the coming weeks, we'll be able to get back on the NLL grind and, provide some more coverage for you. But in the meantime, just enjoy, spending time with your family and friends. Take care of each other and make sure you're taking all appropriate measures. But with that wraps up episode 72. We hope you guys tune in next time to Pro Lacrosse Talk. Today's show is being brought to you in part by Stitcher Premium. You can use Stitcher Premium to listen to shows ad-free such as Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, My Favorite Murder, Wolverine the Lost Trail, or our favorite, The Fantasy Footballers. For only $4.99 a month or $34.99 a year, you get access to Stitcher Originals, bonus episodes, and comedy albums. Better yet, if you go over to Stitcher.com/premium and use the promo code LACROSSE today, you can get 1 month free. So head on over to Stitcher, sign up, and get your free trial today.